My name is Emma, and I am 28 years old. Last night, in the opulent, stifling silence of my family's multi-million-dollar Atlanta mansion, they staged an intervention. Not an intervention to help me, mind you, but an intervention to disown me, to cut me off, for the good of the family, they said. What they didn't know, what they couldn't possibly know, was that the failure they just abandoned is the secret founder and $85 million CEO of Kinetic Digital, the very company they are now desperately trying to hire to save them from ruin. The air in the grand living room, usually thick with the scent of old money and fresh-cut flowers, was instead heavy with judgment. My father, Richard, sat in his usual armchair, a stoic, unyielding figure, his eyes cold and distant. Beside him, my mother, Eleanor, clutched a silk handkerchief, her expression a careful blend of sorrow and resolve, a performance I'd seen countless times. My older brother, James, ever the golden boy, leaned forward, his tailored suit jacket straining slightly across his broad shoulders, a look of almost pitying disappointment on his face. My sister Clara, impeccably dressed and perfectly poised, simply stared, her gaze as sharp and unforgiving as a diamond. Emma, my father began, his voice a low rumble that always commanded attention. We've reached a difficult decision, one we believe is necessary for the stability and reputation of the family. I sat on the edge of a velvet settee, the plush fabric doing little to cushion the blow I knew was coming. My hands were clasped in my lap, my knuckles white, but my face, I hoped, betrayed nothing. I had spent a lifetime perfecting that mask of indifference, of quiet acceptance. A lifetime of being the other, the peculiar one, the dreamer with her head in the clouds, in a family that valued tangible assets and inherited prestige above all else. From a young age, I was different. While James excelled in lacrosse and Clara perfected her equestrian skills, I was hunched over a clunky desktop computer, lost in lines of code, building rudimentary websites, imagining digital worlds. They saw it as a phase, a childish eccentricity. My father, a titan in commercial real estate, often scoffed, "What good will all that computer nonsense do you, Emma? Learn to network, learn to manage assets. That is where true value lies." My mother would sigh, "She's just not traditional, a free spirit." A free spirit, yes, but often a lonely one. Dinners were always a parade of their achievements, their social engagements, their latest acquisitions. My contributions, usually about a new algorithm I'd discovered or a coding challenge I'd overcome, were met with polite nods, glazed eyes, or a swift change of subject. "That's nice, dear," my mother would say, before turning to James to ask about his latest merger. I learned to keep my passions to myself, nurturing them in secret like a hidden garden. My siblings, despite their apparent success, were mostly figureheads. James ran the family's investment arm, largely propped up by my father's connections and capital. Clara managed their charitable foundation, a role that mostly involved hosting lavish galas and posing for society pages. Neither of them had built anything from the ground up. They were products of the machine, not its architects. And I, the one who truly understood creation, was the anomaly. "Your choices, Emma," Clara interjected, her voice cool and measured, "have become increasingly unconventional. You've refused to join the family business, you've declined every suitable match we've introduced you to, and frankly, your lifestyle doesn't align with what is expected of a member of this family." Unconventional. That was their polite word for embarrassing. My refusal to attend their endless charity galas, my preference for late nights coding over early mornings on the golf course, my absolute disinterest in marrying a man solely for his pedigree, these were my sins. They didn't understand the thrill of building something from nothing, the intellectual challenge of solving complex problems, the quiet satisfaction of seeing a vision come to life in the digital realm. We've offered you every opportunity, James added, a hint of exasperation in his tone. A position at Sterling Holdings, a trust fund, but you insist on living this bohemian existence. We've tried to help you, to guide you, but you refuse. Bohemian existence? He meant my small, unpretentious apartment in Midtown, my preference for comfortable jeans over designer dresses, my long hours spent working, not socializing. They saw my dedication as stubbornness, my independence as defiance. They saw my ambition as a lack of respect for their legacy. I looked at their faces, these people who were supposed to be my kin, and felt a profound emptiness. There was no warmth, no true concern, only a desire to prune the unsightly branch from their perfect family tree. I wasn't just being disowned, I was being erased. They were removing the inconvenient truth of my existence from their carefully curated narrative. My father cleared his throat, signaling the final verdict. Therefore, as of this evening, you will no longer be considered a part of the Sterling family. Your name will be removed from all trusts, and you will no longer have access to family resources. We wish you well, Emma, but you must make your own way. The words hung in the air, cold and definitive. A lifetime of being a disappointment culminated in this moment. A strange calm washed over me. The pain was sharp, but beneath it, a tiny, fierce ember of defiance sparked to life. They thought they were stripping me of everything, but they were actually freeing me from their expectations, their judgments, their suffocating world. I looked at their faces, these people who were supposed to be my kin, and felt a profound emptiness. There was no warmth, no true concern, only a desire to prune the unsightly branch from their perfect family tree. I wasn't just being disowned, I was being erased. They were removing the inconvenient truth of my existence from their carefully curated narrative. My father cleared his throat, signaling the final verdict. Therefore, as of this evening, you will no longer be considered a part of the Sterling family. Your name will be removed from all trusts, and you will no longer have access to family resources. We wish you well, Emma, but you must make your own way. The words hung in the air, cold and definitive. A lifetime of being a disappointment culminated in this moment. A strange calm washed over me. The pain was sharp, but beneath it, a tiny, fierce ember of defiance sparked to life. They thought they were stripping me of everything, but they were actually freeing me from their expectations, their judgments, their suffocating world. I stood up slowly, my legs feeling surprisingly steady. I met each of their gazes one by one. My father's, unyielding, my mother's, performatively sorrowful, James's, condescending, Clara's, devoid of emotion. I said nothing. There was nothing to say. Any explanation, any defense would fall on deaf ears. They had already written my story, and it ended with me as the failure. With a quiet dignity that I didn't know I possessed, I turned and walked out of that magnificent, hollow living room. I didn't look back. The heavy oak door closed behind me with a soft thud, a sound that felt like the final period at the end of a long, painful chapter. As I drove away from the mansion, its imposing facade glowing under the Atlanta streetlights, I felt a strange sense of liberation. They had cast me out, but they had also unleashed me. They called me a failure. They had no idea. They had no idea that for the past 5 years, while they were busy maintaining appearances and making safe, predictable investments, I had been building an empire in the shadows. Kinetic Digital wasn't just a company. It was my lifeblood, my rebellion, my silent roar against their dismissiveness. The genesis of Kinetic Digital wasn't glamorous. It began in a cramped, rented room above a noisy bakery, fueled by instant coffee and an unshakable belief that the digital landscape was ripe for disruption. After graduating with a computer science degree, a degree my family grudgingly tolerated, deeming it impractical, I refused their offers of a comfortable position in one of their subsidiaries. I wanted to build, not just manage. I wanted to innovate, not just maintain. My idea was simple, yet revolutionary. a dynamic AI-driven platform that could predict market trends and consumer behavior with unprecedented accuracy, offering bespoke digital marketing strategies to businesses of all sizes. While others focused on broad strokes, Kinetic Digital would dive deep, personalizing every campaign, every interaction. It was a vision born from my own frustration with generic, ineffective online advertising. I poured every ounce of my being into it. I coded relentlessly, often working 20 hours a day, sleeping on a futon in my tiny office. I ate ramen noodles for months, scrimped on every expense, reinvested every penny. My initial team consisted of 3 equally passionate, equally broke individuals I met at a local tech meetup. Liam, a brilliant data scientist, Sarah, a UX UI wizard, and Mark, a natural-born salesman with an infectious enthusiasm. We were a motley crew, united by a shared dream and a burning desire to prove ourselves. There were countless setbacks. Funding was scarce. Established players scoffed at our audacious claims. Investors looked at my youth and my lack of corporate experience with skepticism. I remember one particularly brutal pitch meeting where a seasoned venture capitalist, a friend of my father's no less, openly laughed at my projections. $85 million in 5 years? Little girl, you're dreaming, he'd sneered. That moment, that condescending dismissal, fueled me more than any praise ever could. We persevered. We learned. We adapted. Our first major breakthrough came when a struggling local bookstore, desperate for visibility, took a chance on us. Within 3 months, their online sales skyrocketed by 300%. Word spread. Small businesses turned into medium-sized enterprises. Our client list grew, not through expensive advertising, but through pure, undeniable results. Our algorithms became smarter, our platform more robust, our team more experienced. I consciously kept Kinetic Digital under wraps from my family. Part of it was a desire to protect my creation from their meddling hands, their inevitable attempts to advise or integrate it into their staid portfolio. But a larger part was a deep, primal need to prove it to myself, on my own terms. I wanted to build something so undeniable, so successful, that even they couldn't dismiss it. I wanted to stand on my own 2 feet, not on the foundation they had laid. 5 years later, Kinetic Digital was no longer a scrappy startup. It was a recognized force, an industry leader. Our client roster included Fortune 500 companies, our technology was patented and envied, and our valuation had indeed soared past the $85 million mark. I was a CEO, a founder, an innovator, leading a team of over 200 brilliant minds. I had built an empire, brick by digital brick, fueled by the very dismissiveness that had always defined my family's view of me. And they had no idea. Life outside the Sterling Mansion was simpler, yet infinitely richer. I still lived in my midtown apartment, albeit a slightly larger one. My wardrobe was still practical. My social circle consisted of genuine friends who celebrated my successes and supported me through challenges, not just for my name or my connections. The money was a means to an end, a validation of my work, but not the driving force. Freedom was the driving force. The freedom to create, to innovate, to be myself. Then, about 6 months ago, I started hearing whispers. Whispers about Sterling Holdings, my father's real estate empire. The market was shifting, new technologies were emerging, and their traditional brick-and-mortar approach was struggling. Their competitors were embracing digital transformation, streamlining operations, reaching new demographics online. Sterling Holdings, however, remained stubbornly analog, resistant to change. The whispers grew louder, reports of missed targets, failed bids, significant losses. I even saw a few articles in industry journals hinting at financial instability. My family, so obsessed with their public image, was starting to crack. The irony was not lost on me. While they had dismissed my computer nonsense, the very world I had embraced was now leaving them behind. About a month after the intervention, a discreet email landed in my inbox. It was from a senior executive at Sterling Holdings, a man named Mr. Davies, whom I vaguely remembered from family functions. The subject line was innocuous: inquiry regarding kinetic digital services. My heart gave a strange lurch. They were reaching out to my company. I forwarded the email to my executive assistant, Sarah. Handle this, Sarah. Standard procedure. Get them in touch with our sales team. I tried to remain detached, professional, but a part of me, a small vindictive part, was already tingling with anticipation. Over the next few weeks, I received regular updates. Sterling Holdings was in deep trouble. They needed a complete digital overhaul, a massive marketing campaign, and a sophisticated data analytics system to understand their rapidly shrinking market share. They were desperate. They had approached several top-tier agencies, but none, apparently, had the unique blend of cutting-edge AI and bespoke strategy that Kinetic Digital offered. They wanted to schedule a preliminary consultation, a deep dive into their problems, and a proposal from Kinetic Digital, and they specifically requested a meeting with the CEO. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was it, the moment I had subconsciously been preparing for my entire life. I called Liam, my data scientist, into my office. Liam, pull every piece of public data you can find on Sterling Holdings: financial reports, market analysis, news articles, social media sentiment. I want a comprehensive profile. Liam, ever efficient, nodded, a curious glint in his eye. He knew my family history, knew the delicate dance I'd played with them. As I reviewed the reports, the extent of their predicament became painfully clear. Their once unassailable empire was crumbling. Decades of complacency, coupled with an arrogant refusal to adapt, had left them vulnerable. They were bleeding money, losing clients, and their brand reputation was severely tarnished. They were on the brink of collapse, and Kinetic Digital was their last, best hope. I scheduled the meeting, not at their office, not at a neutral location, but at my office. The Kinetic Digital headquarters, a sleek, modern skyscraper in the heart of Atlanta, a monument to innovation and success, a stark contrast to their old money, traditionalist edifice. I wanted them to walk into my world on my terms. The day of the meeting arrived. I chose a simple, elegant navy suit, a crisp white blouse, no extravagant jewelry, no overt displays of wealth. My power didn't need adornment. It was inherent in what I had built. I sat in my spacious, minimalist office, the city skyline stretching out behind me, a silent testament to my journey. The door opened, and Sarah ushered them in. My father, Richard, looked older, his shoulders slightly stooped. My brother, James, his usual confident swagger, replaced by a nervous fidgeting, his suit looking a little less sharp than usual. And Mr. Davies, the executive, looking pale and anxious. My mother and sister were notably absent, perhaps deemed too emotionally volatile for such a critical business meeting. They walked into the room, their eyes scanning the modern decor, the panoramic views, the subtle Kinetic Digital branding. They sat opposite me, their expressions a mix of apprehension and a kind of desperate hope. They didn't recognize me, not at first. My hair was styled differently, I wore glasses now, and the confident, composed woman before them bore little resemblance to the failure they had disowned. "Good morning," I began, my voice calm and steady, a practiced professional tone. "Thank you for coming. I'm Emma Sterling, CEO of Kinetic Digital." My name hung in the air, a silent bomb. My father's eyes widened, a flicker of disbelief, then dawning horror. James gasped, a small, choked sound. Mr. Davies, who had been about to offer a polite greeting, froze, his mouth agape. The color drained from their faces, leaving them ashen. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the frantic pounding of my own heart. My father finally found his voice, a strained whisper. "Emma, is that really you?" I allowed a small, knowing smile to play on my lips. "Yes, father, it's me, the family failure, as you so eloquently put it." The humiliation on their faces was palpable. It was a raw, visceral thing, far more potent than any anger or sadness I had ever felt. They were confronted not just with my success, but with the magnitude of their own short-sightedness, their arrogance. They had cast out a diamond, mistaking it for a common stone, only to find themselves drowning in the dark. James, ever the one to try and regain control, stammered, "But Kinetic Digital, this is how?" "I built it," I stated simply, my gaze unwavering. "From the ground up. While you were busy disowning me for being unconventional, I was building this company, this empire, the very company you now need to save yours." The irony was delicious, a bitter, sweet taste on my tongue. Their carefully constructed world, built on appearances and inherited wealth, was crumbling. And the only person who could save them was the one they had deemed unworthy, the one they had discarded. My father, usually so composed, looked utterly broken. "Emma, we made a mistake, a terrible mistake. We had no idea." "No, you didn't have any idea," I agreed, my voice devoid of emotion, "because you never bothered to look beyond your own preconceived notions. You never saw me, only the reflection of your own expectations." I leaned forward, my hands clasped on the polished surface of my desk. "Let's be clear. You are here because Sterling Holdings is on the verge of collapse. You've lost market share, your brand is in tatters, and your digital infrastructure is non-existent. You need Kinetic Digital more than you can possibly imagine." They nodded mutely, their eyes darting between me and each other, a silent acknowledgement of their predicament. The power dynamics in the room had shifted irrevocably. "And you," I continued, my voice firm, "the family that disowned me, that called me a failure, that cut me off for the good of the family, you now expect me and my company to ride in and rescue you?" The silence was excruciating. The air crackled with unspoken pleas, unspoken regrets. This wasn't just about business anymore. This was about a lifetime of slights, of being overlooked, of being told I wasn't good enough. "Kinetic Digital," I stated, my voice ringing with authority, "does not work with just anyone. We choose our clients carefully, based on shared values, vision, and a genuine commitment to innovation. And frankly, Sterling Holdings, as it stands, embodies none of those." My father flinched as if struck. James looked away, unable to meet my gaze. Mr. Davies just sat there, defeated. "However," I added, a calculated pause, "I am willing to consider a proposal, but it comes with conditions, very strict conditions." Their heads snapped up, a flicker of hope in their eyes. They were desperate enough to agree to anything. "Firstly, Kinetic Digital will take a significant equity stake in Sterling Holdings, not just a fee for service, but a true partnership, where my company will have direct oversight and decision-making power in your digital transformation. We will essentially be running your company's future." I watched their faces fall, the realization of the loss of control hitting them hard. "Secondly," I continued, enjoying the moment, "the leadership of this project will report directly to me. Not to you, Father, not to James, to me. And all key decisions regarding digital strategy, marketing, and technology will be made by Kinetic Digital." Their faces were a canvas of disbelief, anger, and dawning submission. They had come seeking salvation, and instead they were being offered subjugation. They had wanted a lifeline, and I was offering them a gilded cage, with me holding the key. "And finally," I concluded, my voice dropping to a low, chilling tone, "there will be a public acknowledgement. A full, comprehensive press release drafted by my team and approved by me, detailing the extent of Sterling Holdings' struggles and how Kinetic Digital, under my leadership, is stepping in to save a failing legacy. It will be a clear, unambiguous statement of who holds the power and who holds the future." My father looked like he had aged 20 years in the past 10 minutes. James was visibly shaking. The public humiliation, the stripping of their carefully constructed facade, was perhaps the cruelest blow. Their reputation, the very thing they valued above all else, would be irrevocably tarnished, and by my hand. "Take the day to consider my terms," I said, standing up, signaling the end of the meeting. "I expect a formal response by tomorrow morning. If you decline, Kinetic Digital will walk away, and you will be left to face the consequences alone. I assure you, there are no other companies who can offer you what we can." I watched them file out, their shoulders slumped, their heads bowed. They had come to me, the failure, begging for salvation, and I had given them a choice: surrender completely or face utter ruin. The irony was exquisite. The revenge, a dish served icy cold, was finally complete. As the door closed behind them, I walked to the window, looking out at the sprawling city. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. A sense of profound peace settled over me. It wasn't just about the money or the power. It was about validation. It was about proving, not to them, but to myself, that I was more than their labels, more than their dismissals. I was Emma, founder and CEO of Kinetic Digital, and my story, my true story, had just begun.